If you're clear about what your values and goals are, if you're clear what you want in life and what you don't want, you can now begin to make mindful choices. Therefore, clarity is at the heart of making mindful choices and at the heart of intentional living. Hey, deal makers, and welcome to the show where it's all about financial freedom with real estate. So you kind of feel stuck somehow, like you're not really making progress in life, and maybe you feel like you've been drifting through life a little bit, like some unseen force is holding you back. Now, if you want to break through and live an intentional life, one that's full of purpose and fulfillment, then this episode is for you. I used to feel stuck until probably my early 30s, drifting through life, and I've been working since then on living more intentionally. And so in this podcast episode, I'm going to share with you my what I call five clarity practices that I've developed over the past several years that have made a huge difference in how I architect my life. Before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to OC, who gave us a shout out on Apple for the podcast. He or she says the podcast is just as good as the book. It breaks down all the different components of multifamily in a digestible way. Combined with the book, it may be the best combo of knowledge you can get today. Appreciate that, OC. I'm glad we can provide value through the podcast. And the yellow book is a great complement to the podcast because it kind of gives you an overview of multifamily syndications, how it's possible that you can get into apartment buildings, raise money, even if you've never done that before, even if you have no prior real estate experience and a bunch of money in the bank. So if you have not checked that out, it's a great entry into the world of syndications and, of course, financial freedom. That book is called Financial Freedom with Real Estate, just like this podcast. And if you do enjoy this podcast, join OC and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll give you a shout out as well. We're always looking for people doing deals in our ecosystem that we've helped in a meaningful way. And this time it was mentoring student Ashley B. Garner, who closed on 35 units in Gastonia, North Carolina. The deal is valued at $3.45 million. So if you've done a deal, tag us on social media or email us at support@themichaelblank.com. And we'd love to shout you out as well. Napoleon Hill is most known for the book called Think and Grow Rich, probably the must-read under personal development. He talks about masterminds, but his estate, this book was written in 1938, I think, but his estate recently published a book that you may have never heard about called Outwitting the Devil. It's a fascinating book where he has a conversation with the devil about all the ways that the devil prevents and keeps us all from achieving kind of our best selves. And one of the themes in that book is that most humans tend to drift through life. And I certainly did that until my early 30s. I mean, I just kind of did what everybody else around me did or what became easy or what my parents thought I'd do. And I went to college, got a master's degree, and then got a good paying job with benefits. And my life was actually easy. I never really failed at all until I became an entrepreneur in 2005 and left my job. And then, of course, everything changed from that point forward. And I started to actually really try to live life more intentionally. And in fact, my first book I published, it's not even the yellow book. It's not the book I mentioned earlier. It's actually called Intentional Living. And I published it in March 15th, 2013. This is before I even started blogging. And you have to look for it really hard on Amazon. You have to Google intentional or search for Intentional Living by Michael Blank. It's 99 cents. It's got 4 reviews, 3.7 stars. Anyway, it gives you an indication of the kind of journey I was on. And so intentional living has really been a focus of mine over the last decade. And how do we really become more intentional in our life? Now, if I prompt ChatGPT on what intentional living is, and I give it a few prompts to kind of boil it down to one sentence, okay? Here's what it says. Living an intentional life entails making mindful choices aligned with personal values and goals to live a more fulfilled and purposeful life. There's a lot of words. We're going to break this down actually on this podcast episode. There's a lot of stuff here. Making mindful choices aligned with personal values and goals to live a more fulfilled and purposeful life, right? So fulfillment, what's fulfillment, right? It's really like by aligning your actions, those mindful choices with your values and goals, you're more likely to experience a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your life, right? And then purpose, living intentionally, helps you identify and pursue what truly matters to you. And that gives your life a sense of purpose and direction. And those are really powerful, right? I mean, that's really what we're looking for here is fulfillment and purpose. Now, the definition also talks about this thing called mindful choices. Now, how do we do that? And that's really at the heart of intentional living is that. And so there's some clues in the definition. It says these mindful choices are aligned with personal values and goals, Well, do you know what your personal values and goals are? Right? And certainly I didn't. I mean, if you just do the things that you do next without really thinking about things, you're kind of drifting through life. You're not thinking about yourself, what's important to me? Where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, right? And so the key to making mindful choices is clarity. It's clarity. If you're clear about what your values and goals are, if you're clear what you want in life and what you don't want, you can now begin to make mindful choices. Therefore, clarity is at the heart of making mindful choices and at the heart of intentional living. Now, over the years, I have implemented what I call these 5 clarity practices, 5 disciplines I've been following to create clarity so that I can make more mindful choices, so I can live a more intentional life, and I want to share those with you. There's 5 of them, okay? Number 1 is my perfect day. Number 2 is goal setting. We talk about 5-year future self, 1-year goals, quarterly rocks. Number 3 is a monthly clarity day. Number 4 is weekly strategic time. And number 5 is a daily morning routine. You'll notice it goes from kind of big picture down to every single day. Intentional living requires, well, intentionality. So I'm going to kind of outline each of those and what I've been doing over the years, and hopefully you'll find that useful for yourself and your life in figuring out, well, what is intentional living like for you? What do you need to do? Mindful choices do you need to make so you can, in fact, live a life of fulfillment and purpose? All right, the first clarity practice is my perfect day, or your perfect day, right? It's really what it does is it challenges you to imagine your perfect day. What does that look like? And there's so many things that go into your perfect day. I'm going to share mine with you. I developed this, my last time I updated this day was in 2019 or so. And here's what it says. This is my perfect day. I'm in a rented house on the beach with my family for the whole month. I wake up at 6:30 a.m. before anyone else is up. I do my miracle morning routine, write for 30 minutes. I'm working on a book, and then I go for a run on the beach. At 8 a.m., the family gets up and we eat breakfast together. And from 9 a.m. till noon, I work a bit, and the kids come home from, well, doing school because we homeschool. I check some emails and I evaluate a new deal. At noon, we have lunch together. After lunch, of course, it's nap time for 26 minutes. That's the magic for me. And at 2 o'clock, I have a podcast interview with a super interesting guest. And afterwards, I record a couple of YouTube videos because I love creating content. Around 4 p.m., the workday ends. Kind of put the pencils down a little, and happy hour is 5 p.m. sharp. After that, we have dinner at our favorite seafood restaurants. And once we're back home, I sit outside with my wife Vivian for a while with a glass of wine, reliving memories and dreaming about the future. And at 10 o'clock, it's time for bed. What a perfect day, right? Perfect day, it's a simple day. And what happens when you write these things out is that you start architecting your life to try to make that perfect day happen. And not just once, like a bucket list thing, but as many times as you can. And since then, that spending 1 month on a beach, we actually started doing that 3 years ago. And actually rented out a house on the beach for a month, and that was a big part of that. And that really makes me happy. And a happy hour on the weekends is always at 5 o'clock. We have almost all of our meals together with our family. So this is, for me, has been a very powerful exercise because it's kind of where you want to go. So this is kind of the clarity practice number 1 is, what does your perfect day look like? So you can kind of imagine what you want to work towards to. Gives you clarity about what you want your days to look like. Clarity practice number 2 is goal setting. And we do it in 3 time frames. One is 5 years, 1 year, and then quarterly, every 90 days. Now, what we do in goal setting, okay, is we set goals for all areas of your life. So it's not satisfying from an intentional living perspective to only set goals about how much money you make or what your work life is. No. Yes, part of those things, so income and work are part of that. But what about your health, right? What goals do you have around your health? How about your relationships? How about spirituality? What are you going to do to develop your spirituality? What about contribution or generosity, right? Giving back. And then you have things like travel or recreation. What are you doing for fun? What are you doing for hobbies? What about relationships? Well, we talked about that with your spouse, with your family, and then with friends as well. And so we do that in 5 time frames. In a 5-year future self is a 5-year one. What does that look like for you? Describe yourself in each of those areas. And then do that, okay, now that I know where I want to be in 5 years, now put down 1-year goals. And then from that, construct 90-day goals, quarterly rocks. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on it right now because I have an entire podcast episode. It was episode 405. So point your podcast listener to episode 405, just was a few episodes ago, to the beginning of the year. It's called The Best System to Crush Your Goals in 2024. And I talk about this goal setting aspect. But it's very clear because once you kind of have a clarity of how you see yourself in your perfect day, you really go through each area of your life and you set goals for each of those things. And for the 5-year ones, maybe less goals, but you're more describing yourself. I'm working out 5 times a week. I have a weight of so-and-so, whatever the case may be. So you're really describing where you'd like to be in 5 years, and it really gives clarity to every part of your life. The third clarity practice is what I call having monthly clarity days. This is where I take an entire day and I really spend it on thinking, on clarity. And so, for example, and you can use this for both personal and professional clarity. And in fact, you may want to mix the two. For example, you come up here's the way it works. For every single clarity day, you come up with a series of questions that you want to tackle during that day. And there's not going to be 20 of them, there might be 5 or so. But for example, you may want to say, I want to work on my 5-year future self. So what does that look like, right? Or you may want to review one that you already did. It's been maybe a year or 2. Am I on track? What do I need to change? Another question could be to look at the progress on goals that you made in each area of your life. How are you doing, right? Rate yourself in each area of your life from 1 to 10. And if you're maybe a little lower, maybe you want to do something. And what do you need to do to make progress or get that from a 6 to a 7? Or for example, another thing you can do is there any deep work that you need to do from reading the last book? Just a question I came up with, because sometimes we read books and then we go to the next book and there's really no transformation coming from reading that last book. So do you want to spend maybe an hour and debriefing the last 2 or 3 books you read? Maybe looking through your notes and actually translating that to things that you want to put into your goals, things that will actually make a difference in your life. You may want to spend some time reflecting on the 5 people you spend your most time with, right? Because you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do you need to make any changes to that, right? Write that down. What if 4 videos could give you everything you need to build $10,000 a month in passive income in as little as 180 days? I've proven it many times over, and so have hundreds of other people just like you. And one of the best ways we discovered to reach financial freedom is by investing in apartments. Now, I know that sounds like super advanced, but the truth is you can get started today. You don't need years of investing experience. You don't have to have millions of dollars in the bank. So register for the free Masterclass Apartments 101 today and take that first step to really discover how you can build true wealth for yourself and your family. Let's do this. So these are things that you do in your clarity day, and you may want to spend in advance of the clarity or even the first hour of your clarity day kind of writing down what you want to do that day. So it requires some intentionality, dare I say. Now you can use this for professional work as well. So if for example, you're a manager in a company, you may want to kind of review your top priorities. Are you working on things that are important to you? What about your strategy for your department, for example? The people, do you have the right people in the right seats? What changes do you have to make in there? Processes and systems, like things that you're doing at work with your team or your department. Is there anything you need to change on your processes? And then reflect on what can I do better? What can I do better interacting with my team, achieving goals, things like that. So you can use this clarity day, not just for personal goals, but also for your professional goals as well. All right, the fourth clarity practice, what I call scheduling weekly strategic time. We're getting closer and closer in time frame now. We did this monthly clarity days, and now we're doing something weekly. And that is, I schedule strategic time twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And I really schedule this. In fact, I schedule everything because if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't get done. It's the way it is. If you think you'll do something, if there's extra time, guess what? There'll never be extra time. One of the things I schedule is strategic time. So most of the week, you're doing what? You're doing emails, you're on phone calls, you're putting out fires, right? That really leaves no time for deep work, for actually moving the company forward, for moving your team forward, or even your personal career forward. And this forces you to focus on those things. So every Tuesday and Thursday morning from 9 to 12, I have strategic time scheduled in my calendar. And again, I put goals of what I want to do in that time. And it's not checking email. I'm not doing phone calls. I'm not recording podcasts. There's things that I want to do that are in my personal or professional goals that I want to make progress towards. And I need uninterrupted 3 hours to do that. Sometimes you need an hour. You can't just do it in 15 minutes. You just got to be dedicated, strategic, deep work time. And that happens during those times. This is really where it's the 80-20 rule, really. In 20% of my time, I actually move myself forward 80%. That progress I make is the time during this time. I also, by the way, schedule everything. So not only do we schedule meetings in that time, but I also, for example, schedule lunch. I have a 90-minute lunch meeting with myself, and during that lunch, I actually work out. Like I don't really love working out in the morning. My body gets I do get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but my body doesn't really like to do it. I do some of my best thinking in the morning, but not really working out. So I do it at lunch, and then I have a nice lunch, and it kind of resets my day. And this I've found has really has worked for me as well, and that's in the calendar. And my assistant knows not to schedule any calls or meetings during that time. It's kind of protected time. So I do that with my entire calendar. So if you were to look at my calendar, you'll look, oh my gosh, Michael is busy from basically dusk till dawn, or the other way around, dawn till dusk, you know what I mean? But it's not the case. There's a lot of white space scheduled into my calendar, but it's scheduled so that I maintain that white space. And I use the time in the way that carries me forward. So that's a fourth kind of clarity practice, is scheduling strategic time. The fifth one is a daily morning routine. I've always struggled with my morning routine. I really have. I've tried it for years, and I did some meditating app, or I did this thing, and I just couldn't stick with it. It was boring or whatever. I just couldn't do it until I read the book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And I highly recommend that you read that book because it gives you a blueprint for how to conduct a morning routine. He has this thing called SAVERS, an acronym. It stands for silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. Now, there's a lot of stuff there, but he basically gives you a methodology for conducting, the first 60 minutes of your day. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all of those every single morning. In fact, it depends a lot on what I'm doing. It depends on what's going on right now, and it changes in the seasons. For example, at one point when I was working on my yellow book, I actually wrote early in the morning for 45 minutes. That's the only time I could actually get it done. So I used part of my morning routine to really write. And that was very fulfilling for me as well. And I used to try to exercise in the morning. Like I said, it doesn't work for me. So I axed that from the morning routine, but silence, reading, journaling, for example, is a challenge for me because it's dark at 6 a.m. in the morning, right? I can't see my journal. Well, I can pull out my phone or my laptop, but I don't want to do that. That feels like work to me, right? So journaling, I'm still working on now. I got a little night lamp that I got, for my journal, and that's working pretty good. It's important to reflect on the previous day and what's worked well and why you reacted certain ways. Again, it's becoming aware, self-aware, so that you become more intentional. And so journaling has actually been useful. So I'm still working on this. It's certainly not a perfect morning routine, but I have been very consistent. I would say probably 6 to 7 days a week, I'm doing a miracle morning routine in some form or another. And I highly, highly recommend it because this is really a time where you can center yourself. And this is important. You gain clarity, but you also center yourself. And this is also why, for example, my faith is very important. So you're sitting in silence, you're praying, or you're reading the Bible. Now, why are you doing those things, right? You're doing those things, in my case, well, because it centers you, it gives me a sense of peace before the day comes. But honestly, my faith is a very strong source of energy and power for me. And, knowing that there's a higher power who's looking out for you, when the crap's hitting the fans, you're going through a lot of stress, and you can fall back on your faith, and someone's watching over you, that everything will be all right. It calms me down. It gives me a strong sense of strength almost. Being able to be at peace despite what's going on around you, it's a strength. I used to think a long time ago that, religious people or people of faith or spirituality, it's a sign of weakness. And I no longer believe that. If you can tap into some power that makes you better, stronger, more resilient, then why not do it? Why not pursue your spirituality and develop that further? And certainly a morning routine really goes a long way towards that. So it kind of centers me, gives a sense of peace, allows me to reflect on my goals and what I want as well. So in short, if you feel like you're kind of stuck right now, okay? If you feel like you're kind of drifting, stop drifting. Make that clear, mindful choice to develop an intentional lifestyle, right? So you need to create clarity. In order to need to create clarity, and you do that by following these 5 clarity practices I just outlined. So step number 1 is craft your perfect day. That's what you're working towards. You want to live as much in that perfect day as you can because it makes you happy, right? And then sit down and spend time setting goals. Figure out what is your 5-year future self? What does that look like for each area in life? Then from that picture of yourself in 5 years, what do you want to achieve in the next 12 months, right? Write that down and then, okay, cool, 1 year, then what are you going to do in the next 90 days, right? They can become more and more specific and more tangible. So goal setting is number 2. Number 3 is having a monthly clarity day. Now you can use that clarity to actually do all these things I just talked about, but we never actually spend enough time to really create clarity. So this basically forces you once a month to really sit down. I can assure you, if you do that once a month, it is going to be amazing how much clarity you're going to get from that. And then once you do it monthly, which is really cool, you really want to bring it into the week and the day. So bring in a week is you want to schedule strategic time where you're making progress towards your biggest goals. And those goals could be professional, but they also could be personal goals as well. That is where you really move yourself forward in that scheduled strategic time each week. And then if you haven't done it already, develop that early morning routine. It's so powerful. If you're struggling with that, like I did, definitely read Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning. It'll really be helpful. So there's a lot of stuff here. There's 5 clarity practices. What can you start doing right now? Maybe start with your perfect day. I had maybe, 8 sentences in there? Write that down. Get up early in the morning, just write down, man, what is your ideal perfect day? Write it down. And then see where it goes, right? What's next? Maybe you want to schedule that first clarity day. Because if you schedule that clarity day and it's your calendar, now you can spend that entire day doing goal setting. Very powerful as well. Again, look at the podcast episode 405. In that podcast, in the show notes, there's actually the spreadsheet that I use, the Living Fully Compass that I talk about in there. You can download it. So you're not starting from scratch. So you can go to that episode 405 and download that spreadsheet as well. And then in the process, answer this question. How important is financial freedom in that perfect day, in that life that you want to architect, right? Because maybe it's not. For me, it's absolutely critical because I can't live the life I want to live without financial freedom. There's things that I want to do that may or may not generate revenue. I may want to take some time off. For me, it's an absolute critical. I can't imagine life without that. And maybe for you, it's different. And if it's not different, then really focus on achieving that financial freedom. That's really what we're all about. We want to help you become financially free with real estate, specifically by investing in apartment buildings, because we know you're not going to be able to do it with single family house investing. It can only be done with apartments, and we want to help you do that. And it doesn't require experience and a bunch of money in the bank, because we're going to raise money. You're going to build a team around you, and it's actually so much easier than it thinks. In fact, it's about the same amount of work as you flipping a house. It's just that you're directing your attention to a different kinds of real estate strategy. So answer the question, how important is financial freedom in our life, and what are your goals? What can you do to make progress towards that? So when you follow these 5 clarity practices, you can create better mindful choices, okay? Clarity, better choices that are aligned with your goals and your values, because clarity creates those things. And when you create more mindful choices, as a result of that, when you create more mindful choices, you will live a more fulfilled and purposeful life. A life where you experience a greater sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And a life in which you pursue what truly matters to you. And it gives you a sense of purpose and direction. And that, my friends, is how you live a more intentional life.